Okay, call this meeting to order. We are at the North San Mateo County Sanitation District meeting at our regular meeting for Board of Directors. And may we have roll call, please?
Here.
Here.
Present?
Present.
Present. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now the approval for the regular meeting minutes of May 14, 2018. Do I have a motion?
Is that concluded?
Oh, it's in the consent? Okay,
Okay, gotcha.
all right.
Thank you.
So at this point, do we have any? That's all the consent agenda. So are there any public comment for the North San Mateo County Sanitation District? Seeing none?
Wait,
Oh,
do you have any consent?
no reports? Okay, no reports from the Board of Directors? And there's no public comment. So at this moment, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's quick.
Thank you. It was all on the consent
Well,
agenda.
it's nice to see him dressed up.
Efficiency,
pleasure.
everything was on consent. All right. Okay, on to our next meeting. Okay, so we'll call this meeting to order. This is the City of Daly City Regular City Council meeting on Monday, June 25th. Thank you, everyone, for coming. For those wishing to address the City Council of any item on the agenda or under public appearances, oral communications, please complete a speaker card located at the entrance to the council chambers and submit to staff member as early in the meeting as possible. All right, can we have everyone stand for Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Ms. Christensen,
Here.
Mr. Gingona,
Here.
Mr. Buenaventura,
Present.
Mr. Sylvester.
Present.
Ms. Manalo.
Present. We have an approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have an approval for the consent agenda?
Ask pull number 8, please.
Okay, number 8. Anything else to pull from this agenda?
With the exception of item number 8, I move to approve the consent agenda in its entirety.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so item number 8, commending Patricia E. Martell on the occasion of her retirement.
Yeah, I asked to pull that. In case you're wondering, tonight's Pat Martell's last meeting as the city manager of Daly City. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and I'd like to make that announcement that this is, in fact, her last day. You know, I never thought I would be around to be able to make that announcement, but in fact, here I am. You know, me and Pat go back a very long time, and it would be a big understatement for me to say that I'm going to miss her, because I don't think the place will be the same without her. We have in Daly City, at least since I've been on the city council, we've had a number of city managers that have actually been trailblazers, that have actually been people that other city managers have looked up to in this county, starting with David Rowe, proceeding through with John Martin, and then with Pat Martell. It's a luxury. the kind of luxury that you have as a policymaker to be able to have at your side a person that is well established and that is respected within not only this community but the national and international community is something that you kind of take for granted sometimes. And I want to say publicly, Pat, that those skills and those things that you developed over the years have been yielded so much benefit to us as a city. You know, it seems like only yesterday that I met you and Bev at the Mike Nevin's dinner down at the Progress Seminar. And I just want to say that, you know, even on that day when you were Assistant City Manager of South San Francisco, I recognized in you something very special. And we were able to, through timing, we were able to hire you not once but twice. And when we hired you that second time to be the city manager, I knew that it was one of the best decisions that I personally have ever been part of. I don't think the city, I think what we'll find later on is that people will find just how good that they had it when Pat was here. I think that you'll see a lot of it reflected in the public works and the things that we've done in this city. The legacy that she leaves in this city is one that it's indelible. I look around, I see people here that have actually had dealings with Pat over the years. That's what we're going to miss. The ability to walk into someone's office and be spoken to in a straightforward manner and be assisted in that way. So yeah, I'm going to miss you, Pat. I'm looking forward to your retirement and you having fun with Bev and your dog. And don't be a stranger.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Sylvester.
As many of you folks out in the audience know, I'm pretty new and came on the council last year. You know, and being new at this, I definitely had to ramp up and learn about Daly City. Most of my knowledge comes from the constituents and the citizens of Daly City. So naturally, I became a little biased. And when I would bring these concerns to Ms. Martell, I learned that there are always two sides to the story. And Ms. Martell definitely led me to the right sources to, and provided the information so that I can see. This assisted me in knowing that if I talk to someone, I can just say, well, I can't make you any promises, but let me find out. That has helped me tremendously. Ms. Martell, I also like to say I appreciated your availability. Many times I surf the internet late at night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and when I find something that could probably serve Daly City, I immediately send an email to Ms. Martell. And before I can wake up, a few hours later, she already had an answer for me. That was completely amazing to me. Completely amazing. So, Ms. Martell, I'm going to miss your availability. I'm going to miss your knowledge of this city because before my time, I've seen the fruits of what you have brought to the city, such as the War Memorial. And to have someone with your knowledge, it's something that we will sorely miss. So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your service and for what you have done for Daly City. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
I'll say, Pat, I want to say congratulations on your retirement. I think my fondest memory of you is actually when we were on a parachute together in the Philippines when we went and visited during the Iloilo Friendship Celebration, when we went to Boracay together You were very gracious in coming and going to the Philippines with all of us. I thought that was a really opportune time for me and a lot of the people in the delegation to get to know you. And I enjoyed that tremendously. I thought the personal interaction is something that was important for me. I wish we had had more of that. You are clearly someone that cares about this city. I see you as the last person that leaves this building every time I'm here. I see that light on your office always on. You have been extremely responsive to every question I ask, and you get it done in just an incredible, timely pace. You perhaps didn't always have the answers that I was looking for, but you endeavored to really try. And so I appreciate your work ethic, what you did for the city. You clearly have made a mark here in Daly City. We are grateful for what you've done, and I wish you and your family all the best, and thank you for all your hard work and service to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the council? Seeing none, I do want to say thank you very much for all your effort, time, and commitment. With over 30 years to public service, that is huge. There definitely is a passion that you need in this sector. And so I just want to say thank you. It's been definitely a pleasure to work with you over the course of time we've had. And just wish you the best with retiring, vacationing, and traveling. It's well-deserved, and I truly will say, yes, this Daly City, you've served Daly City very well, and it's definitely now a well-deserved retirement for you. And so thank you for all that you've done for the public and all your care for it.
Yeah, I'd like to round it up at the end here.
Councilmember Christensen.
Yes. I first got involved in what's happening here in Daly City in 1999 and have been actively involved since then, and probably all the way to my grave. Pat and I both have a strong love for Daly City. Many times over those years, we had a different way to express that. So while there was always respect for each other's intelligence, toughness, and the ability to express what it was we were concerned about, on many times we've been on opposite sides of the battle lines, but we both had Daly City and what's best for Daly City at the heart of our concerns. And definitely have worked more together in these last few years now that eminent domain redevelopment is gone, because that's mainly what we were fighting about. So everybody wants to fill a pothole. Everybody wants to make sure that we have enough police and firefighters and recreation programs and library hours. So it's been a pleasure to work on those things that we share and to try to make them better. And I know that we've always had the disagreement over the salary issue, but I hope you use that money to have a wonderful life. And that you and Bev and Buttercup, who's actually the really darling of the family, have a wonderful time. And please come back and visit us. I know these projects that are under development now, you'll be driving by and waving at those. So thank you so much for what you've done, and we'll see you around.
See you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I'd move for passage of this resolution.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous, Pat.
Thank you so much.
There you go. That's why I said it.
Pat, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you very much. You know, as I reflect back on the almost 19 years that I've been here in Daly City, a lot has changed. And a lot of it has been very, very positive, and there's been some tough times. I've told the council, as well as the staff here in Daly City, that since the Great Recession of our time, this has been the hardest job anyone could ever want to have. It's been very difficult since the recession to keep things going, provide the services that people have become used to, provide for our employees, and ensure that Daly City continues to make progress. But I think we have managed to do that. It has taken a lot of sacrifice. It's taken a lot of things that none of us wanted to see happen. But in doing what we have done, we have been positioning Daly City to prosper in the future, to grow and develop with some of the projects that are going to come to fruition in the next few years. And I feel very, very strongly and very optimistic that Daly City has a very, very bright future ahead of it. It's been tough getting there, but it will be worth it in the end. And when that happens, I will be the first one to have the biggest smile and say that we worked hard, we rolled up our sleeves, and we did what we needed to do in order to make progress. Mike mentioned a couple of the projects that I had the great honor of working on from the day that I walked in as city manager in 2005. And we have a great legacy there in the city, not me, but the legacy that we were able to provide new community centers, new libraries. But probably the thing that I will cherish the most, because it was a project I was responsible for, not when I was city manager, but actually when I was the assistant city manager. And that is the development from the ground floor up of the Imagination Child Development Center, Imagination Station. And at the time that that project came to fruition, the council looked around and talked to the city manager at that time, John Martin, and me, and said, we have a lot of younger employees today that wouldn't it be great if we had a child care center for them so that they could feel comfortable, that they could be back at work and have their children close by. And from that rose Imagination Station. And I think it has done a lot to support our employees, some of whom I can see here, who benefited from it. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most gratifying things that I ever did, because I love babies. And each time our employees had infants and they came back to work and they left them in the infant care center, I'd go over there and I would pick them up and I'd squeeze them and hold them. And it was a way of connecting with our employees in a way that you could never do if you didn't have a child care facility as close as we did. I hope those who have children in the future will consider using Imagination Station because of its close proximity, and also because in the end I've seen the children of a lot of our employees, our city attorney, our community development director, our HR director, that have gone to the facility. They've grown up together, and it's expanded the family feeling in the Daly City organization. Those are the things, the relationships are the most important about what I've been able to be involved in this city. And those are the things that I will cherish the most and remember the most in retirement. So thank you very much to this council, to the council that hired me, that took a risk and hired me. Thank you. It's been a great honor and privilege to serve all of you.
Thank you.
At this point, we will open up our public hearings. Agenda item 10. Can we have Mr. Chu, please? It's the notice of lien and special assessment to rental property.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. I see some folks leaving. Maybe, did any of them want to have a comment? Any comment cards? No? Okay.
Thanks,
you.
Lawrence.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see a few people stepped up and fixed it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just passed out the revised attachment to the staff report. Since last Monday, 6 property owners have paid the business license tax for the rental property. Daly City Municipal Code require all commercial and residential property owners to pay business license rental property tax based on the gross rental income. The first notice was sent out to the past due rental property owner in August 2017. The second notice was sent in January 2018. And the final notice was sent to the past due property owner on May 25, 2018. This notice provides the property owner the opportunity to pay the past due business license tax. All the unpaid business license tax will be assessed on the fiscal year 2019 property tax bill. There are 3,000 rental property business licenses in Daly City. The revised attached include 267 rental property, or 9% of the total rental property business license that did not respond to the free notice that the city sent out. And staff recommend the City Council approve the notice of lien and special assessment to real property. I'm happy to answer any question that you may have.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Sir, thank you so much for this report and update. Can you give me a rough estimate? I'm not going to hold you to the penny. How much are we talking about here? I mean, I understand it's a lien, but we won't get it until the property's sold or what have you. But do we have a rough estimate?
So the rough estimate for the in the staff report is around $120,000.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Councilmember Christensen?
Yeah. How'd you track these people down?
Well, we have been calling and sending notice to them.
Uh-huh.
So we try different ways to outreach to the property owner.
So some of these people used to have business licenses and just stopped getting them?
And most of them are repeat offenders, so it means it's repeat on the list again and again year after year.
And I see a bunch of numbers here. I see the license numbers, and then, so all of these, the ones that just have like the 302963 number, something, one of those that doesn't say license in front of it,
Those are like a different category.
a category?
Yeah, just
Okay.
like a type of like a business license.
Gotcha, okay. And so these people have had multiple opportunities.
Yes, we have at least.
And have chosen to ignore their tax requirements, okay?
Yeah, we have at least like a free notice sent to the license owner, business license owner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And at this point, should we open public hearing?
Opened it.
So move.
Do
Open.
we have a second?
Any cards?
Do we have a second to
Yes.
open? Thank you. May we have Miss Eva Scofis?
I'm sorry, I think I have signed in the wrong attendance, so I will.
Wrong item? Okay, thank you very much. So we don't have any more public comment on this.
Motion to close.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Do we have I entertain a motion to adopt the resolution by roll call?
Move to adopt the resolution?
Second.
May we have roll call, please?
Ms. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Gingona,
Aye.
Mr. Buenaventura,
Aye.
Mr. Sylvester.
Aye.
Ms. Manalo.
Aye. Thank you very much. We are now on item 11. It's a public hearing for the proposed purchase of an additional automated license plate reader using supplemental law enforcement services less funding. We have Chief Hensley and Captain Christensen.
I always remember his name.
I wonder why.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm Captain Cameron Christensen, and this evening I will be presenting the staff report for the proposed purchase of an additional automated license plate reader, hereafter referred to as ALPR. On June 11, 2018, Council approved this current time and place for public hearing about the proposed purchase, which is required for compliance with California's Civil Code for ALPR technology and procurement. ALPR technology automatically scans license plates at a high rate of speed and cross-checks those license plates against law enforcement-specific databases, checking for missing and wanted persons, stolen and wanted vehicles, as well as providing resource and intelligence gathering and criminal investigations. This technology improves officer efficiency and, more importantly, officer and community safety, as the officer no longer needs to manually input the information into their car computer. This allows them to stay more alert to their surroundings with an audible alert sounding if there is a relevant inquiry. The police department currently has 2 ALPRs affixed to police vehicles and 1 that's affixed to a parking enforcement vehicle. The police department is proposing the purchase of 1 additional ALPR unit to be affixed to a city-owned police vehicle. This unit will be deployed in the field on a regular basis as part of standard patrol duties. The total cost for the purchase and installation of the ALPR will not exceed $18,000, and all funds will be taken from the Police Department Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund. There will be no cash match or other city costs. At this time, staff is available to provide any additional information or answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councilmember Sylvester.
I don't have a question, but I basically have a comment. You know, with this new technology, I can remember the old days where the officer had to go into the station and print up what's known as a hot sheet. You put that hot sheet right in the middle of the car, and then you got to go down the street. Oh, let's check that plate. And it's a random check. And when you check the plate, you look on the hot sheet, nope, it's not stolen. And then if you work midnights, you have to use your flashlight, but then you light up the whole car, so you have to put the flashlight in between your 2 fingers so you don't light up the whole car. You know, I just have to say how amazing this technology is on ALPR readers, and the fact that the officer, he or she, don't have to do that anymore. All they have to do is just drive down the street and they'll just pick up these plates. You are absolutely correct that it will increase efficiency, and I believe that $18,000 is money well spent. So I just wanted to make that comment, and thank you for bringing this to the council, Captain.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Captain. Councilmember Christensen.
When you hear or read what this technology can do, I'm assuming this is something we'd want more of in the future if funds became available?
Yes, I would agree.
Okay. So keep that on our radar,
Absolutely.
so to speak. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So at this moment, we'll open, can I open the public hearing, please?
I don't think there's any comments. Oh, yeah, move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no comments, motion.
Close.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now, entertain a motion to approve the purchase of additional automated license plate reader using supplemental law enforcement services.
So moved.
funding.
Second.
Okay, and adoption through roll call. May we have roll call, please?
Ms. Christensen,
An enthusiastic yes.
Mr. Gingona,
Yes.
Mr. Buenaventura,
Aye.
Mr. Sylvester.
Aye, and would you kindly let us know if you get more? Okay, we want more.
Yes.
Ms. Manalo.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good job, sir.
Item number 12, update on the long-term financial plan. We have Ms. Martell. And this is just for information only.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. With the recent adoption of the two-year budget, which will commence on July 1 of this year, we thought it would be worthwhile to revisit with you an update on our budget forecasting model and our long-term financial sustainability plan. You may recall that several years ago, in the aftermath of the Great Recession of our time, in order to get a handle on the city's financial situation and with the purpose of charting a course for the future and laying out some of the decision points that are necessary for the city to make if we are going to achieve financial sustainability in the long term, we engaged Russ Branson and Public Finance Management, our consultant, to assist the city in developing a forecasting model which we can update based on changing financial circumstances. And so tonight we have asked Russ to be here and to update the council on our budget forecasting model and to give you a sense of some of the critical decision points and factors that the council will have to continue to review prudently over the next few years in order to ensure that you are addressing several of the very key financial issues that Mr. Branson is going to outline for you tonight in the update of the model. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Russ.
Great.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you, Pat. I want to say I'm honored to be here in your last council meeting, so it feels very special. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The update we're about to give you and talk about is it's a budget projection. It's not a prediction. It's what we think might happen under a given set of assumptions, some of which we list during the project. And so as we go through this, and as you think about this, one thing that's important for me to say in terms of how I think you should use it as a council is that a budget projection model is really not about the future. It's about right now, and it's about understanding, what do we do now to affect the future? So there's different outcomes, and we'll talk about that tonight. What if the assumptions change? What if this happens? What if that happens? And you see the model moves, right? The impact of what might happen changes. And so it's really about, based on how you see the future, what are the best decisions you can make now? So with that, there's three broad areas we're going to talk about. The first one, economic context. We've talked about this for the last few years, updated numbers. We'll go through this fairly quickly. And then as we get to the baseline forecast and alternative budget assumptions, we will slow down.
Okay. I was hoping we'd get this.
There you go. Okay, I'm going to be on slide 4.
Can I ask a
Yes.
quick question? So when was the last time we did a budget forecast model?
So we've updated this model. The last time we were here before you was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
every time you adopt a new 2-year budget.
Thank you.
So one thing to keep in mind, and we talk about this a lot, is that the U.S. economy is now in the second longest expansion ever between recessions. And so if we go another year, we'll be at the longest recession ever. And we're not predicting when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen next year or 5 years from now, but it will happen at some point. We'll have a downturn. And as you are aware, that many of the city's major revenue sources are impacted by the economy, sales tax, property tax, and things of that nature. So this is more, the average length has been 58 years. We're in a very long expansion. Unfortunately, a lot of the benefit that's come and incomes and things of that nature don't necessarily come to the city's coffers, but to individuals. But, is there a recession coming at some point? Yes. And so what's happened with Daly City in terms of, this is looking at, in San Mateo County, 10 cities altogether. Of the ones we looked at, you have the highest population at 107,000, and you've grown a little under 1% a year. Your income levels, however, are the lowest on both a household and per capita income basis in San Mateo County. And that means people have less to spend. It also means that you have, well, this is just related, I think this is a little dated to 2016 Census Bureau numbers, but relative to everyone else in the county, you have a little higher unemployment rate and the second lowest poverty rate, even though those poverty rates compared to the state aren't bad. It's still, you have a higher poverty rate as well. Housing values have gone up. Those are not, for most of the state, 600,000 median home value is high, but in San Mateo County, you're the lowest of the 10 cities we reviewed. And just because you're across, you border San Francisco, how do you compare to the city of San Francisco? Again, your household income is slightly lower, but per capita income is much lower, right? A lot of single people living in San Francisco, and home values are less. Your unemployment rate's a little less. So, even though, and those are comparable areas, San Francisco does a lot better than you in many ways. And lastly, and this is really the point of all of this, when you look at, when we're talking about budget, right, all those factors of home value and incomes and poverty and everything else that goes into that, shows that Daly City has the second to lowest total taxes per capita at $540. Foster City is lower, but you look at Burlingame at $1,900 per capita. And what that means is that in the market you're competing with, both in the services you provide and what you can pay the people who work for you, are going to be lower just because you have less revenue to provide those services. And that's what the city has struggled with, and you're in a very high cost, high income area. So as we look through the whole budget and we see some of the struggles you have, these are some of the factors that underlie that. So let's talk about a baseline forecast. The way we've done the forecasting here is we provided a baseline forecast. That baseline forecast is basically saying if nothing really changes, if things continue on as they are, we know that PERS rates are going up, that's in there. We know there's inflation in property tax and sales tax. You have cost increases with your labor contracts and whatnot. So all that's in there, but no big changes are expected so no corrective action by the council. That's the baseline forecast. And in this baseline forecast, as you don't have now, there's an unfunded portion of retiree health and your OPEB that's not funded. You need to add more to keep up with, to pay back the liabilities and to keep up with the liabilities you're generating. Unfunded operating costs, and these are an amount that staff has calculated in terms of things that you've cut that you'd like to add back. We haven't added those back in this budget. And then deferred capital maintenance. And this is, you're in the same boat as a lot of cities, and I think as Pat mentioned, that coming out of the recession, it's been a very difficult job to manage cities. Capital has fallen off the radar for many cities, and you don't have it back in here yet. And I'm not going to go through all the assumptions, but we talk about key assumptions that have been made in here in terms of growth in property taxes, sales taxes, salaries, PERS. So where we've had outside data, we've used that from your sales tax consultant, from your PERS actuarial, from your OPEB health. So all of that's built in here, but these are assumptions, right? So this is, again, it's not truth, it's not reality, but it's our best guess at this point based on what we've seen in the past. So the baseline forecast. So this shows the net revenue over the next 10 years. This goes out 10 years with a slight expected positive for 2018 net revenue, and then going into next year and kind of going down through 2024 to 12.9 million. And then the increase in 25 is you pay off your pension obligation bonds in 2024. So it's a little lower deficit in 2025. So If this was your reality, which it won't be because you can't actually afford to go this negative over time, it would be $97.9 million kind of a cumulative deficit or fund balance over that period of time. Now, that's again based on what's happening now, and we want to talk about the big some of the drivers of that. And let's first go to talk about the fund balance, the impact on your fund balance. You currently have about a 28.6% fund balance. You have a required level of I think 17% is the goal. 15%, sorry. 15% is the goal, and you go beyond that 15% in 2020, and you go negative fund balance by 2022. Again, if there's no corrective action, if nothing is done by the city to do that. So why is that? Let's look at some of the major revenue and expense growth drivers. On the revenue side, property taxes and sales taxes are your bigger drivers. Those are shown growing at moderate rates. So not big bumps in either over the next several years. We will talk about, well, what if it's higher? That would be one of the what-if scenarios we do. Other taxes, license and fees grow at, again, the same kind of moderate rate. So overall, we're showing expenses growing at about 2% a year, whereas our revenues growing at 2% a year, whereas expenditures grow much higher. So what's the driver for that is PERS, right? So your pension costs are going up, nearly doubling over the next 10 years. Health insurance is going up, and your services, supplies, everything is just growing a little faster over the next several years. And so that creates that imbalance and puts you into a situation of that negative growth. So we talked about some of these workforce costs growing 44%. CalPERS nearly doubling by fiscal year, should be 28, not 24. And then your retiree health also growing, getting close to doubling during that same time period. So let's talk about, one of the issues that you have going forward is that a large portion of your budget are personnel costs. That's the same with most cities. You're at about 76%, which is, it's on the higher range of what you might see in cities. And I say it's a dangerously high ratio. Everyone's there. And the reason it's dangerous is because any change in that has an oversized impact on your bottom line budget. And so how do you balance the need to hire more people, to pay people a reasonable wage in this high cost of living area, and still keep your budget balanced? So I know it's the tightrope you've been walking for several years, and it's probably going to continue. We talked about pension increases, and the CalPERS has this shows your CalPERS normal cost, which is just the cost of paying enough to make sure people in the future have enough to retire on, given the current assumptions, actuarial assumptions, and the unfunded liability is all the stuff that you haven't paid in the past. And it's not that you haven't paid what PERS told you to pay. You did. It's that PERS didn't tell you to pay enough, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. The biggest one most recently is PERS discount rate, or their assumed earnings rate over time, has been lowered, or it's in the process of being lowered over the next few years. This year it went down to 7.35% from 7.5%. Going down to 7%, might it go lower? Who knows? But you can see the cost of that and how that feathers into your costs over time. And the problem with these, the costs are going up. Again, they're going up by about $11 million a year by the time you get to FY28. You don't get any, employees aren't getting, anything more from that, right? You're not getting any more service, and the residents here don't get anything either, except, it's not a bad thing. It's just a lot more cost without a lot of more service on the street. OPEB expenses, again, they're going up from about 2.1 to 3.9 as people retire, as healthcare costs go up, and this is from your actuarial study. So all these things combined are kind of the main things that are driving, right? So it's assumptions on revenues, assumptions on expenses, which are a little easier to assume on because revenues have absolutely no relationship to expenses in the way California municipal finance works. And so then we say, well, what things could change the budget, right? So now we're going to get into alternative scenarios. And this one says, okay, nothing else has changed my baseline, and the baseline is still the light blue. This is net revenues. Or the baseline is the tan. And we say, well, what if we grow personnel costs a little less? Instead of 2.3%, we just grow them 1% a year, which is fairly low, right? Employees wouldn't like to hear that's all they're going to get is a percent a year. But what you can see is even if you cut them to a percent, it improves your position on a net revenue basis. It doesn't solve the problem. But what if you went to 3%, right? What if you said, hey, we could afford this in, coming up, we go to 3%. Yeah, that makes the problem worse, which is kind of what you'd expect, right? So this is the kind of thing where we said it's a model isn't about what really happens in the future. It's about what do we do now and how might it affect you in the future. Recession scenario. We said, let's look back and just, this is a pretty mild recession. We did look back on some sales tax decreases. There's some property tax. There was primary sales tax increase without any real big property tax increases. Decreases, I'm sorry, and that we had about a 5% decrease in sales tax, and then kind of slowly brought it back over 5 years, right? So pretty mild recession, how it might affect you, but it has long-term impacts, right? Because once you go down, it takes you longer to come back up. So it's just something, again, to be aware of. My wife today, she sees these things and sent me something from the New York Times. It says we're getting close to an inverted bond curve, which is that we're down where the 10-year yields are pretty close to the 2-year yields, and if they go inverted, which means they go less, that's been a long predictor of recessions, right? So it makes me nervous. Probably should make you nervous too about what's going on. Optimistic revenue scenario. So this is saying we haven't changed any of these expense assumptions, but what if we're wrong? I mean, we know we're wrong in terms of actually exactly how your property tax and sales tax would grow. But what if they went up an additional percent a year, compounded percent, 1% additional per year over our 2.7% on property tax, go at 3.7, and so 3.1, 4.1 sales tax. Also, the BART Hotel actually happens. Ceremony Retail Center expansion continues and kind of is completed, which it should. There's a new car dealership that may come in that probably is about $500,000 a year in revenue, and then you get this transit occupancy tax increase that you're talking about later on tonight. So what if all those things happen, and it says, hey, if you can do all that, and some of that gets feathered in over time, that you're going to have a lower and lower decrease, and over time you might even go positive, right? If you can do these other things. So again, that's saying. What this should be telling you, there's no one thing that's going to save you. You're not going to grow your way out of this, most likely. Or this kind of says maybe you can if all these things come up, but not for a number of years. So there's something. Yeah, go ahead.
This is a rose-colored glasses view.
Yeah, well, yes, it's an optimistic view. Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I don't know, rose-colored glasses. I mean, things. As a former finance person, I tend to see things negatively and pessimistically. And so for me, yes, it'd be rose-colored. But things have, the last several years, in a lot of ways have gone beyond that.
Miracles are rare.
Yeah, that's right. Well, miracles don't keep going on and on forever, right? So you have to think about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So then we said, well, what if but here's the other thing you have. So here's the pessimistic, I'm putting my pessimistic hat back on. So all those rose-colored glasses, as you said, revenues come online, but your excess ERAF goes away, right? So this is something that it's always been a concern since we started this, right? How long will this excess ERAF happen? San Mateo County I think it's now one of 2 counties that has excess ERAF. It was 3, one has dropped out. So it's, this is ERAF is the Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund, which was the state's shifting of property taxes from cities and counties to school districts. And the way they did that is if your county generated more property tax revenue than was in that ERAF shift, then the excess ERAF, is what they call it, came back to the cities, right? So, and why has it gone? Look, we looked at 611,000. You're the lowest in home values. You're the lowest in the county. Very high home values, obviously, in this county that's created that. But that could go away, and it's gone away in other places. So if that happens, and we did 20%, basically a 5-year phase out of that ERAF, and what you can see that where we went positive before in those outer years with optimistic revenue, now you're negative all those years.
Wow.
So again, this is just, none of this is predictions, but these are kind of what ifs. How do you look at this whole thing? And then we looked at optimistic revenue, excess ERAF phases out, but you fund your deferred costs, because what happens is over time you have to reinvest, right? You have to reinvest back in the city, in the buildings, right? Your roof needs to be replaced. Your HVAC needs to be replaced. Your parks, right? There are cities that have to take out play structures because they're unsafe to play on and they can't afford to put them back in, right? So those are expensive items you have to reinvest. So this assumes that. And again, it just brings you down further, right? It makes it harder and harder to catch up. So we looked at a kind of a balancing scenario, which is, well, okay, so if you have optimistic revenue, even assuming ERAF continues, you don't fund your OPEB, you kind of do a pay-go, which is just paying for what you have to pay every year. But you pay for deferred maintenance, or no, you don't have OPEB, deferred maintenance, or unfunded operating costs. You still need to control costs, right? So this shows wage growth at 1% a year can be achieved. You can't achieve that through reductions of positions through attrition, lower actual wage growth, right? Control of other expenses equal to wage. Are there other things you can keep down? And again, this shows that all these things together. So even with the optimistic revenues, you have to watch your expenses, unless something happens that gets you more money, right? You're going to talk about a little bit of that tonight. And so I didn't have one. I think you're going to still struggle. I don't have one that just solves all your problem tonight. But what we show is that there's a lot of things that you can do. You see the cumulative deficit under all these is very different. I wish for you optimistic revenue because you've been struggling for so long that you need a break in that regard. And at the same time, you have to just be thinking about the decisions that you make and how they add to the costs or avoid costs in the future, so you can continue to try to rebuild the city in a way that makes sense for you and the residents of the city. And I know, what we talk. I know you have before you tonight 2 revenue measures, and those will help somewhat, but those don't necessarily solve the problem fully either. So. In summary, you remain in a precarious financial situation, right? You survive, but you've cut staff and services. You have savings through vacant positions. You're not funding long-term liabilities. So that's a current savings, but a long-term cost. What are the recommendations? I think these are things you've been doing, right? Control wage increases and hiring. Make sure you can afford what you pay for. Support continued economic development. There's no magic bullet, but the things you do have coming on will help. In terms of a hotel is a great help, as well as your retail sales tax. Seek voter approved tax increases. So I think you have those on the ballot, or you have those on discussion tonight. And those, again, I think that's the only way you can really help control additional revenues, is by asking the voters to pay for something. And then maintain your cost recovery levels. And this is just something that, again, during the recession, a lot of cities kind of stopped. And I think you guys have kept pretty up to date on these. But just maintain what you can cost recover, do cost recover, keep those fees and other revenues up to date. Every dollar counts when you're trying to balance a budget and add back in services. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Branson. At this point, does my colleagues have any questions? Councilmember Sylvester.
Slide number 5, sir, where you talk about population.
Yes.
Do you have any reason why we left out some of the other cities within San Mateo?
These are Yeah, these are historical, what we looked at historically, and I think we tried to find cities that were somewhat close and somewhat have similar characteristics, although you are the largest city in San Mateo County. Some of the, I've done work, like say Los Altos is a much smaller community, also a much wealthier community. So trying to find something about, at least close to the same level.
So how would East Palo Alto fare in this chart?
I don't know offhand, but I could find out and
Okay.
get back to you through Lawrence.
And what I also didn't see, we're talking about employees. Do we have an idea as to the city's total number of employees as compared to its residents? Say, for instance,
So
Daly City.
employees per capita.
Yeah, say, for instance, Daly City with 107,000 107,000 people, and I believe we have about 500 employees?
We
550?
actually have less than 500 employees, and we have provided, we can give you that information, Councilmember. We provided each time we do the budget, so we have
Right.
included in the budget discussion the per capita revenue as well as per capita employees. And Daly City remains, I believe, Lawrence, the lowest per capita for employees
And we have been for a long time.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Which validates my point. One of your recommendation is that we consider not giving our employees the basic CPI raises, to which I feel they have been down already for too long, since 2009. And I know we have to do something about this, but at the same time, we need to work harder in developing our revenue streams, as you made mention. Now, I had a question on slide number 27.
Can I just
Yes.
also just briefly respond to that? Because my recommendation isn't that you don't give that raise. The recommendation, what it's just saying is there are implications to when you give raises, and there's implications when you hire. And so the goal of this is to understand those cost implications, rather than not giving it, because I think I understand 100%. You have to be able to pay competitively to retain people and attract new people. And so that's a struggle, and then you have to and you also want to be able to pay for it, because you don't want to be laying people off. So I think that's a great point. I just want to say we're not recommending you do that. We're just trying to show the impacts both ways.
The impact as a
Yeah.
result. You're right. Slide number.
And the fact that we need to rely on expanding the revenue base, so
Exactly.
bringing in new revenue that will offset those expenses going forward is the goal of this.
Yes.
Well, yeah, we're going right down that path. As you made mention, I had those questions thinking optimistically, especially you answered my question when you got to slide number 24, where we're talking about the different projects that we have coming up, and I just wanted to make sure we taken those in account.
Yeah.
And of course, there may be some other projects that
Right.
come down the line. Had a question on slide number 27, where we're talking about attrition and not hiring if someone retires. That could be cost savings, but at the same time, how does that relate to our population when at that time
Yes.
our population grows?
Right.
And just because somebody retires and we don't fill that position, are we doing a disservice to our
Yeah.
community? So that's something we have to consider also. That's all the questions I have. Thank you so much for your report. It's very informative.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'd like to hope that would look at the optimistic part, seeing a lot of the projects come into fruition that were mentioned down the pipeline, and then also other opportunities that may unfold, in different areas of Daly City. So,
Yeah.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to say something.
Councilmember Christensen.
I don't know how you people live your life financially. I know many people have huge debts, and that causes them a great deal of stress and anxiety in their life. But I think we all have to agree that the best way to be able to predict a positive future financially is to not spend what you don't have. And if that means you can't give a 3% raise to your employees 2 years in a row, then you can't do it if you don't have the money. Right now, we're taking money out of reserves and moving forward with that. That's already been passed. But I think we always need to keep a cautious eye. When you plan for the best case scenario, I'm going to have a lemonade stand and I'm going to make $50 in one day. It's not going to happen. You can pray for it, you can wish for it, you can think you deserve it, but it's not going to happen. And so I know a lot of people like to think of best case scenario financially. Those are usually the people that are seriously in debt. And the people who look at worst case scenario financially are the people who have a lot of money because they were planning for the worst thing that could happen, and usually the worst doesn't happen, someplace in the middle. But I think as a city, we need to, at the very least, be in that center ground. We cannot be in the rose-colored glasses area, or one of these days, we're going to end up facing a bankruptcy, and then all the incredible things that we've been able to do are going to be for naught. The state takes over, they run the show, they send our police department to the sheriff's department, they send our fire department to county fire like they've done in other cities, they change the retirement, I mean, they do all sorts of stuff. So I think it's cautious to be more conservative. Let's not think about the optimistic revenue, but a conservative look at revenue, and only spend it when we actually have it. When we see the sales tax coming in at a higher level, then we can talk about an increasing salaries for employees. But to get in that place where you don't have the money and you're making the decisions to spend money that you don't have, that I'm very worried about our future, if that's the way this council is going to look at the future. So just an alternate opinion.
And we are looking at revenue opportunities in the upcoming 2 agenda items, which we hope, to raise the hotel tax and also the business license fees. And so it's looking at these opportunities and that we're able to, hopefully, it's not a one-solve issue or problem, it's multiple factors. I think we need to, as mentioned before, look at all the possibilities and alternatives around, and it's not only around economic development, we understand that, but I think that we have to look at every stone unturned. And that is if we have to be more robust in reaching out to what opportunities are at hand. If it's looking at, I know it mentioned before with the Cow Palace and how that down the line, hopefully there's timing towards that. And federally, there, it's marked as an opportunity zone, and that's what they called it, meaning hopefully we'd have some financing or financial investors that will look at that area, which we have vast land there in cooperation with the state and hopefully Cow Palace. There's opportunities that, have not come to fruition. I think, as we make decisions, it's around also understanding that we have, as mentioned, an employee base that is smaller than others. And they've done so much for the city of Daly City. And, we have to also honor that and give that report back. And I think that, they've waited a long time and we need to honor the employees that serve our city. So as we move on, let's move to agenda item 13. Options for future implementation of commercial cannabis businesses. Ms. Martel? Busy evening for your last meeting. I see you on every...
You're making me work really hard on my last council meeting.
tonight, this is a follow-up from the meeting that we held a couple of months ago where we reviewed for you the results of the community outreach that we had conducted, and we had a discussion about a variety of different options and directions that the council could look at moving forward if it was the desire of the council, based on the community input that we had provided to you, to proceed with considering making a decision about introducing the commercial cannabis industry into Daly City. So tonight, we have our consultants back, our consultants from Muni Services, Jeff Colin, the senior advisor, and Fran Mencia, who's also here, who's the government relations director for Muni Services. And they are going to be providing an overview of the variety of options that we had previously discussed with you, but tonight we are actually looking for specific direction from you, because based on the direction that you give us tonight, whether it is going to be a yay or nay, that we proceed with implementing some of the options that are available to you with regards to the commercial cannabis industry, it will then require some very specific follow-ups in July with very specific dates, with July 23rd being the last possible date when you can take action relative to placing any kind of measure on the ballot. And so we are looking for very clear direction tonight so that then the staff can follow up thereafter and come back to you in July with all the necessary resolutions, ordinances, and things that would be required depending upon the decisions that you make tonight about how you would like to approach, if you would like to approach, implementing the commercial cannabis industry in Daly City. So with that, I'll ask Jeff to come up.
And I don't know whether this got loaded or not. So we'll pause just a minute here while we get the presentation loaded.
Is there something loaded in? Is there anything loaded into?
You looking for a mouse? There's one up on the table here.
Probably need a USB to connect it.
There
Oh, she got it.
Is that blurry or is it just my eyes?
No, it's okay.
A little
It's
bit.
on the edges, yeah?
Yeah,
Commercial,
okay.
the top one. There we go.
Yay, crystal clear.
Thank you very much. Mayor and members of the
make it
City
full
Council, it's a
screen.
pleasure to join you again this evening, and City Manager Martell, if I could just change hats for a minute, and also congratulate you on your retirement and for your contributions to the profession. As I know your council knows and your community knows, you served as the president of the International City County Managers Association, the top job in the country for city managers, and have a great commitment to the professional aspect of city management. And you can see the benefits of that playing out in your own community. So thank you for your service to your own community and to the profession both. Yeah. So as your city manager mentioned, we've spent quite a bit of time together over the last several months talking about the commercial cannabis industry. We also went out into the community and held 3 different town hall or community workshops where we talked about the industry and sought feedback from the public and the people who attended those meetings. And really tonight, the goal for tonight's meeting is to really obtain direction from the city council. As City Manager Martell mentioned, we've got some critical dates coming up shortly. And if the city does have an interest in moving forward with the commercial cannabis industry, that direction will be important this evening. So we'll want to talk about zoning and the setbacks required by the state and the options available to the city in setting those. We'll review the business types within the cannabis industry, perhaps talk about the appropriate number or size of those businesses within Daly City. We'll present some licensing options should you choose to move forward with the industry. We'll talk about fee and cost recovery measures, as well as potential taxes and tax rates. And then again, review that critical timeline that's facing us if you choose to move forward with a tax measure on the upcoming ballot. This map should look familiar to you. We've shown that to you a number of different times, and this outlines the state 600-foot radius from sensitive sites. And they define that as schools, recreation centers, and daycare centers. And you can see those in the dark green area is the actual outline of the physical limits of that particular facility. And the light green is the buffer area around it.
Mission Street, you can have.
And the
No place on Mission?
salmon colored or light red color, however you want to describe that, is the commercial zoning areas within the city. This chart is a little bit hard to read for the audience, but essentially what it tells you is that there's only one other city in San Mateo County that has chosen to permit medical and adult use retail sales in the county, and that's the city of Pacifica. There are a number of different cities that have authorized manufacturing, testing, and distribution facilities. And those are indicated by the A's in those last three columns. You can see a number of cities have also opted to permit delivery-only cannabis retail into their city. One of the questions we had last time was, what's the environment in which we might be operating in terms of tax rates? Well, because there's not much approved in your own county, we tried to identify regionally what would be the potential competition that you'd be facing. And so we went to Pacifica, of course, because they've authorized retail sales, and they have a gross receipts tax that ranges, could go as high as 10%, but currently is set at 6%. The city of Oakland has a gross receipts of 5% for medicinal products and 10% on adult use products. San Francisco does not have a local tax on cannabis, but has standard business taxes which would also apply to cannabis industries.
Do we know what percentage that is?
I do not know what the San Francisco tax is. Do you, Fran? No. Yeah. We can find that out for you and bring that back to you if you would like. Berkeley recently reduced their taxes. They have a 2.5% tax on medicinal and 5% on adult use.
I'd say they're trying to draw customers from Oakland.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, you can see the effects of
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah.
So this next slide is a matrix that we'll be using a little bit later in the evening to talk about what does the council feel is appropriate for Daly City. And as we move through that, you can see the types of cannabis industries listed across the top. And then on the left-hand side, we ask, was there community support for that type of industry? Yes or no? What classification might be appropriate in Daly City? Medicinal, recreational, or both? Are there available properties for that type of industry within the city? And two of those, indoor and outdoor cultivation, the council really has already weighed in on those two classifications and said, no, at least preliminarily, I think the input that we got back, the feedback we got back was, no, we don't think those are appropriate, or that there's appropriate facilities to incorporate those within the city. And the last line there is the critical one. Does the council wish to move forward with that type of consideration for that industry? Yes or no? Following making those decisions, then we'll get into the more detailed questions, okay, about is there a limit on the number of those types of businesses? Do you want it to be unlimited? Do you want to put a numerical limit on it? Is there a limit on the size? Are there any additional limitations, like do you want to permit volatile solvents to be used in manufacturing, or limit manufacturing to non-volatile substances? And then there's the question of buffer zones and zoning. What's appropriate in your community? Is it the 600-foot radius that's identified by the state? Is it something less than that? Or is it something more than that? Or do you want to name additional things? I think at our last meeting, one of the council members requested that we map banks and churches, and I'll show that to you in just a minute, and include those in the buffer zones. Are there special areas of the city that are particularly sensitive, or that you feel aren't appropriate for the cannabis industry to be sited in? In other communities, we've seen downtown retail plazas or historic zones excluded from the cannabis industry. And what's the appropriate zoning categories for them to be located in? Is it commercial? Is it mixed use? Is it industrial? And do you want size limitations on how big those industries can be? Should a dispensary be limited in terms of the number of square feet that it can occupy? Same thing for manufacturing or testing. And do you want distance between businesses? In other words, if you decided you wanted 3 dispensaries in the city, is it okay for them all to be located in the same district, in the same block? Or do they have to be 1,000 feet apart from each other? Or are they limited to one in each particular zone or district within the city? Then we'll talk about licensing options. There's 2 main mechanisms that are used for permitting the cannabis industry. One of those is a business license model, where you have a great deal of flexibility in designing the application to collect the information that you want about the applicant. You can build in an evaluation and scoring process based on background, financial viability and capacity, business experience, the business plan that they submit. You can also incorporate residency points, both for resident and resident business experience. You can design a merit-based selection process. You can incorporate operational requirements, things like hours of operations, advertising requirements, community service provisions, hiring provisions, all kinds of flexibility that you have there as well. And then you have the ability to have ongoing financial and compliance regulation and evaluations, audits, site inspections, compliance inspections, and enforcement and disciplinary process, or even a fine process. On the land use side, equally as important, you can also have an application. You can have land use operational requirements and disciplinary action or revocation processes that you go through to revoke a conditional use permit. The primary difference is that the land use process continues on with the land, okay? So you don't have as much control if the business is sold to a new operator unless you have the business license or cannabis license requirement. And so in many cases, we see that a combination of those things is a model that cities choose to move forward with. So I think I've talked about a lot of these things, but the license is for business operation. The license is not transferable under the business license model. The applications can be vetted based on specific site criteria, et cetera. And then we've pointed out the pros and cons on the conditional use permit as well. So after that discussion, then we move to the next one. And we've got lots of questions for you tonight, and I apologize for that. But the first is, should we design a cost recovery process on a full cost basis? In other words, should the applicant pay for the full cost of reviewing the application and conducting that scoring and selection process? And then secondly, do you want to impose an ongoing administrative fee to fully recover your staff costs, your supply costs for monitoring compliance and inspections on an ongoing basis? And then thirdly, is there a desire to incorporate some kind of equity process to make the licenses available to those that may not have the same financial means as others in the process? Then questions about tax structure. Do you want to impose a city excise tax on the industry? On all of the segments of the industry or just some? Do you want to impose it both on medical and adult use? Do you want to impose variable tax rates based on the business type or an across-the-board tax rate? Do you want a special or a general tax? And there's important considerations with voter approval levels, whether it's a general or a special tax. And I would say almost exclusively, the excise taxes that we're familiar with in the state on the cannabis industry have been general taxes to date. What is the maximum rate that you would like the voters to authorize? And we are recommending along with staff that 10% would be the maximum that you'd want to set that at. And in most cases, cities choose to go with a lower initial rate in order to encourage industries to come into the jurisdiction initially. Tax structures, two common structures. The first is based on gross receipts. That's a percentage. We recommend that you conduct audits because of the cash nature of the industry. It's important to make sure that they have good point of sale controls and accounting measures. This tax structure is affected by price fluctuations or increases or decreases in gross receipts. It's very common for retailers and wholesalers, and so dispensaries, manufacturers, and it provides information on the level of business activities taking place within the business. The other model we see out there being used is a square footage model. It too can be used with all the different types of the cannabis industry. It's not as impacted by price fluctuations. It's less complex, but it doesn't capture the level of business activity taking place. Once it's set, that's it. They pay it on a quarterly or semi-annual or annual basis. It's common for cultivation and manufacturers, probably cultivation more than manufacturing, and it's easy to estimate annual or future revenues using that basis. And then our warning slide. Tax revenues fluctuate a great deal. They can be impacted by a number of different things. You can see that actually taking place statewide. I think many of you saw the initial revenue estimates that the state predicted for cannabis-related industries, and they missed them quite significantly. And I think there were a number of reasons for that. I think in part was a backup in their own licensing and permitting process. Hopefully that will adjust favorably in the future, but you can see some of those things outlined on that slide there. And then that timeline, and we'll go into this in more detail as we wrap up the evening and review those dates. City Manager Martell highlighted one of the critical ones there was that July 23rd date, which would be, I believe, your last meeting in July where you would be able to take action on a voter measure.
Sounds good.
And then I wanted to go to the slide that that actually staff prepared based on the addition of churches and banks to the buffer zone. Now, that looks perfectly understandable to me. I don't know about you. Let me attempt to.
If you could give us just a few cross streets to have some idea as to where that is in the city.
Tammy, you can help me on that. Do you have a pointer?
Looks like nothing on this street, nothing.
I'm assuming that thing at the top there going across is John Daly
Yeah. On the left? Yeah.
on the
Sorry.
left, and it curving
this
over to
is
the
John
right must be
Daly.
Mission Street, yeah.
Oh.
Whoops.
Sorry.
Back one. There we go. And full size.
Okay, so we have John Daly up here. This is Mission Street. This is Ceremony Shopping Center.
Uh-huh.
This is Westlake Shopping Center. Skyline Plaza. Let's see, we have the Cow Palace over here, so this
Right.
is Geneva Avenue. Yeah, those are the primary commercial zones. I think you can,
It's Hillside, I guess, huh?
this is Hillside here,
Right, yeah.
yeah. So the salmon colors are all commercial zones, so we didn't go through each of the specific commercial zones. We just went to any commercial zone that allowed any level of retail at all, so we didn't differentiate at this point. The darker green colors are the uses that serve children. And then the lighter green is the 600-foot buffer. This is the state mandate, so this
Right.
is the portion that we can't get out of.
Yeah.
We added a layer for banks and churches, and that would be the light yellow color. So this was the layers that were added beyond what the state's limits were. So that did decrease the available land that could support those kind of uses.
We were asked, if you recall, Councilmember Sylvester also asked us to overlay the transit routes. And unfortunately, Councilmember, we have a separate transit map because we tried to overlay it on this. And if you think this is chaotic, you should have seen it with all the bus routes on it. It just was incomprehensible.
Right, we did confirm those staff looked at that map. Every single commercial zone is served by some form of transit. 1, 2, or 3 bus lines.
Ms. Martell, thank you for that reminder. There's one that I didn't see up there yet. I'll bring it up later. But people need transit to get to go by it. So go in and going out. Okay, no problem with the
Well, all the
transit.
commercial zones are
Okay,
served by transit.
thank you.
There's that area, I think, I see where Westlake is, and then there's a patch of red right there.
Here?
What? Yeah.
That's the horse stable. So this is in the coastal development zone, so it's highly unlikely that
Right.
we we would see activity there, but it is zoned commercial.
Okay, that's why I was wondering
Yeah,
what that was
yeah,
and
but
why
that's the
it's
horse
zoned
stables.
commercial.
You ready for my question now?
Okay.
I'd like to thank you for your presentation and update. I do recall that as a city, we can develop an ordinance, and you said the magic word, and that was zone buffering. I had requested at the last time around, what would it look like if we increased it from 600 to 1,000 feet? And that I didn't see. Okay. And then I had a question on your licensing. There was one point you made mention in determining the licensing, and that was disciplinary actions.
Right.
What is that? Is that disciplinary actions like they violated another license that they had, disciplinary? Or is it a criminal investigation to check to see if they have anything on their criminal record that might preclude us approving them for a license? Say, for instance, a crime of moral turpitude.
So you can,
Okay.
and we recommend that you conduct a criminal background check on all of your applicants. And that could be cause for disqualification from the permitting process.
Okay.
The disciplinary action portion of it was a reference to what happens when an applicant or a permittee fails to comply with all the conditions of approval.
Gotcha.
So like, for example, hours,
Correct.
or having people lined up on the street as opposed to inside their business.
Right.
Those kinds of,
Or not complying with the inventory requirements.
right,
Or the
or some other
accounting.
Okay.
specific thing that's part of the license, yeah.
Okay, and then on the criminal check, who makes the determinations as to what type of crimes would automatically disqualify them?
Some of those are outlined by the state through their licensing process. We would use that, or recommend that you use that as a model to begin with. And then if there are recommendations from your own public safety departments for things that they feel strongly about that would disqualify applicants, you would have the option of including those as well.
All right, because the reason why I had asked, because of the three strikes law, if somebody's arrested for a minor misdemeanor petty theft and they're convicted and they do it twice, the third time, it's considered no longer misdemeanor but a felony. So would that exclude them, whereas that crime is probably less than a crime of, say, felony assault? So I think that's something we would need to look at further down the line.
And there was quite a
review.
bit of discussion about that at the state level
Okay.
because of the number of drug violations
Mm-hmm.
for relatively small amounts of marijuana or other controlled substances. And in many cases, applicants had had those convictions 10, 15, 20 years ago.
The time also makes a difference as well.
Yes.
Thank you for that. The last point I'd like to make is basically a comment, and I've mentioned this before in the past. You know, Prop 64 was voted in by the voters, and subsequently, this is what they want. But we as a council, to make that decision, should at least have provided that community outreach to folks to weigh in. We've done that. And from most of the results, it appears to be favorable that folks here in Daly City want it. So who am I to say, no, we won't do it, but at the same time, we have to be judicial and moving ahead and implementing proper ordinance and guidelines and moving forward. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First, let me ask you the question of what covers recreation centers?
Or recreational use.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
centers or use?
no, you said there are schools, rec centers, and daycare centers.
So those definitions are not included in the state code or the state licensing guidelines, so they're up to local definition.
Okay.
I noticed that by looking at the map, that Marchbank Park is one of those areas. It has a little building that's a recreation center
Yeah, if
there.
they have a physical recreation center located there, then we've included it. It includes all the large ones, the Bay Shore Community Center, the John Daly Community Center and Library, Lincoln, Westlake,
Dolger.
Gellert. So the
Yeah.
large facilities are what we're using.
Okay, so places like libraries, so do we have to secure the definitions of recreation centers when we do a resolution or an ordinance? So we can define it specifically, is that something?
That's
you're-
correct.
Okay. It's locally defined, so,
And I think it's also my understanding, and I'd want your city attorney to confirm this, that local governments also have the ability to establish buffer zones that are less than the state 600-foot requirement. We have examples of those in the state as well, where some communities have said 600 feet is too much. They've gone with 500, and they've also chosen not to include things like daycare centers at all in the buffer zones. And so you have those options as well. If you don't address those things and remain silent on them, then the state minimum goes into effect.
Yeah.
Which is 600.
okay. And so when we propose an ordinance, we can get very specific as to what it's excluded, and do we have model ordinances that state, okay.
So there are model ordinances out there. Also, as it's been stated, it's really the city of Pacifica who actually allows it right now. But there are other jurisdictions that regulate different aspects of the industry. So there's definitely ordinances out there where you have to expressly enumerate exactly what we want if we decide to regulate it.
Okay. So I think for me, my issue is more so of so I understand the voters have passed it, and I think it's something that we should honor and implement, but my concern is the impact it will be having on neighborhoods and urban blight. So, and I am also very interested in the issue of public safety and the safe zones, and I think that's all very good. But I think what we need to tackle is how do we come up with a solution to make sure that not one particular neighborhood is getting impacted, and that they sort of do this in a fair and justified manner, so that if it's available, we're not putting the burden on one neighborhood over another. So I know we talked about last time about maybe even going on a tour of one of these places. I'm very interested in that, because I'd like to see firsthand what, so what I've seen so far is that these places are sort of very modernized now. They are, they appear to be very nice, actually, and so I'd like to see how the business model is set up, and is it acceptable in Daly City? And is I don't know, in your experience with our city and what you've studied, is there a particular dispensary that you would suggest is something we should look at as an example of what could fit in Daly City?
There are a number of them in my own county, in Sonoma County. That's a little far for you to travel to. So if you do, as a council, want to set up tours, I think most appropriately for you, that would be a dispensary or a retail sales location, a manufacturer, and perhaps a testing lab. I don't think you're moving forward with the cultivation side of things.
We don't have any land.
Right.
Or any sun.
We would want to find closer examples of those for you to visit, and we'd be happy to do that.
Great. And my other question is, so I look at it like what we have a process to get a liquor license for someone who wants one, right? So they have to pay a lot of money to get the license in the first place. They have to do a background check. And is that the sort of model that you envision happening here?
It's very similar to other industries that have some kind of a controlled substance.
Okay.
I think the liquor industry is one example. There are other licensing requirements for pharmacies and so forth that have to be obtained. I think right now, the licensing standards and review process for the cannabis industry is really rigorous, and probably deservedly so as the industry starts out. I think over time, that's going to migrate to a much more acceptable and simplified process. That's my professional opinion based on the way I see it heading in the future. I think it's appropriate with what we have now to do the really detailed background, criminal checks, financial checks.
Is there an
business
interview
experience.
process?
You certainly can incorporate those. In fact, we just assisted the city of Santa Ana with their interview process this past Saturday, which was a merit-based selection process.
Oh, I see. Okay. And what about the issue of monitoring their compliance and if they are, I don't know, who has the responsibility of monitoring these establishments?
We do.
The local jurisdiction.
So Daly City Police?
Cost.
There's not a-
Doesn't have to be police.
Uh-huh.
Could be your business license or finance staff, could be your code enforcement staff, could be a team that has representatives of 2 or 3 different departments that are involved in the licensing and application and oversight of the industry.
We get to pay them a salary for cost recovery.
That's right.
Okay.
And as
Well, that's
as
why the
you
fees
know-
are important. The 100% cost recovery is very important in all of it.
Okay.
And as you know, our public safety employees are critically important for us. They are also some of the most expensive employees that we have. And so many cities use a combination of city employees for that oversight and compliance process.
So I saw that San Francisco does not charge a tax on cannabis. Do you know what the theory behind that is, and if they are going to, are they thinking about moving forward with a tax? Was that it?
I believe that they have a substantial business tax in place
Right.
that applies to
Yeah, it's
all
way more than
categories of businesses.
these tax rates would be. For them to pay the standard business license fees that are applied across businesses.
Do we know
in San
what that
Francisco.
is?
I don't. I'd be happy to go
Oh,
and get that and bring it back to the council.
It's pretty substantial. Depending upon the size of the business and the gross receipts and all of that, it's pretty substantial.
I see, okay. Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
No, we're going to get started on making decisions, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if there's no other comments or questions, I do have a comment and question before moving on to the decision-making portion of it. I have a question on the delivery aspect of it. And how is that actually facilitated? And I think I asked that prior. And
So I'll say there's 2 major types of deliveries. Deliveries that originate from outside of Daly City and come into Daly City to deliver the product. The second type would be a business that is located in the city and allowed to deliver to residents within the city. The second one I mentioned, the one in the city, is much easier to regulate and license and have fees and taxes associated with their business operation than one that's located in another jurisdiction and delivering into your city. There's also different implications with state sales and use tax. So a dispensary or a business that is located outside your jurisdiction and delivers in, you do not get the
Sales
Bradley
tax.
Burns portion of the state sales and use tax, the 1% that you're used to getting on sales tax transactions. Do they have a district tax? No. Okay. The one exception to that would be if you had a locally approved district tax, district sales tax, that would be able to be collected. If it is located in the city, then you would get that 1% of the sales tax. So delivery, under either model, not a significant revenue source.
On the comment I'd like to make on delivery is, I feel that there's an absolute need for the delivery of medical marijuana. Cancer patients, people with Parkinson's, all sorts of diseases are not able to get to a place to buy it. And so, very much so, and I'd like to see hours, like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. kind of a thing, none of this middle of the night stuff, but when people are up and awake, you know. And so I definitely want to see the delivery of medical marijuana legalized here. Okay, let's go.
Ready?
Facilitate the decision-making process.
Okay,
Yeah,
here we go.
Let's get started.
If I may, Madam Mayor, would it be appropriate now to hear comments if we have any cards before we go through the decision, or do we go through the decision-making? I'm just inquiring. What do you think is
Look like
appropriate?
there are any
If there
cards.
are any cards.
You have,
Let's make some sausage.
one. This
Number
one.
13?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's it.
sure. We'll take the public comment.
Okay.
We have one
Make
card.
a motion to open this,
Well, they can
It's
just-
not, oh, is it? Go ahead.
no need?
It's
It's
just
not a
public
public
comment.
hearing,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, just one.
Okay, so may we have Mr. Ken Alstott, please? Thank you.
Council, Martel, opportunity to travel many, many miles here today and didn't realize you were retiring, so congratulations. I worked with Ms. Martel, manager of the Cow Palace, before I retired 3 years ago. So, one aspect that I didn't hear discussed here tonight that I'm standing here to speak for you for a client of mine is that you have, under a special law that's taken place now where the Prop 215 medical marijuana shows end January the 8th, 2019, and as of January 9th, 2019, these shows, recreational shows, can only be allowed now at district agricultural associations or county fairs, I believe is the other entity. And so we'd like you to
I
also
can't really
consider.
hear you.
I'm sorry?
You need to speak up a little bit.
Okay. So there's another aspect to this that my client has asked for the council to be aware of, is that January the 9th, 2019, the new shows are considered recreational shows. Those stipulations are 21
What
and up.
shows?
At the Cow Palace.
Medical
Marijuana.
Ah,
cannabis shows,
gotcha. Mhm.
yes. And so part of those restrictions are that they can only be done at district ag associations or county fairgrounds. And so Daly City is kind of unique because you have a district agriculture association, also known as a Cow Palace. And so my client would just like to be aware that he has the potential to do those shows, probably 3 or 4 a year. Where the city would gain revenue from that would be from your hotel tax, which you have a TOT increase here tonight, your gas, your food, and those other type of sources that come from that. So we'd just like to throw that out there so that the council can be aware of it. Thank you.
But the Cow Palace isn't in Daly City. It's
What?
owned by the state.
It's 3 entities that Cal Palace owns, but its physical location is part of Daly City as well.
It's surrounded by us.
So I think the important point that's being made about this particular issue, and thank you for raising it, is that these medical marijuana events can be allowed by permit by the city. However, correct me if I'm wrong, because in reviewing the legislation you sent me, it did not clarify whether or not local taxes or fees would be imposed on those events. And if it happens at a state event, when the state collects fees, we don't get a portion of that. So,
Yes, I'm not aware whether you would or would not.
yeah, it wasn't clear in the law that I read that if we impose any local fees or taxes as a result of the discussion tonight and you proceed with the implementing, whether or not those would impact those kinds of events that are being held on state property in an agricultural district. We would get the benefit, as was pointed out, that hotel tax and sales tax, other things, that occur when you have large events and people come to stay and that kind of thing. But for the sales of that medical cannabis, it's not clear whether or not we would benefit tax-wise from that, or any fees.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So back to the decision matrix. This is the starting place for the council to give direction on the various types of industries that they're interested in moving forward with. So if you'd like, let's start with, we'll move from left to right across the top. And the first one is delivery. There was, in our community forums, support for delivery, particularly for medicinal products. And so I'll turn it back to the council and let you have some dialogue and discussion and direction.
Okay, so the table is delivery at this point. If there's any comments, and then I think we could just deliberate.
I would make a recommendation that we allow delivery from any location within Daly City for medical use.
So I'm open for both. I'm open to delivery for both, for recreational and medical.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Me too, both.
Okay, and Judith?
I'm going to think about it for a minute.
Okay, well, I feel that because it passed and everything, that I would go for both medical and recreational, so.
I also wanted to add the reason why I'm against recreational, because as Madam Christensen alluded to earlier, the times of delivery, if we have to identify that, because if somebody just wants to smoke some marijuana and it's 11 o'clock at night and just for recreational, then they call their friends over at midnight. I think we need to limit it, but if we can come up with further specification limiting the times for recreational, then I'd be willing to change my mind and go both.
Okay. So it seems like there is a consensus
Yeah.
on both.
Yeah,
So delivery is.
definitely I want to regulate the hours.
But, okay, yeah, I think there's discussion around talking about more of the definitive hours as mentioned earlier.
And we'll come back to that in the next more detailed slide.
Okay, thank you.
And I will also ask for a clarification as to whether you want to restrict deliveries from outside of the city into the city.
Oh, yeah. I would restrict it from outside the city, coming in the city. We want people to buy here in Daly City.
Don't we, people already
I
are,
think,
Shop here.
but I,
people are already
Yes.
able to get cannabis delivered to
they,
them.
they do medical, they
Right.
do.
I would imagine they are.
And
Yeah.
I've heard statistics around that there is high delivery within,
So what we would, are we, we would want to prohibit the ones that are operating now and just license a new one? Is that what we're thinking about?
Well, I think the discussion is local business or out-of-town business.
Right.
Well, right now, the only deliveries of medical marijuana are occurring from external
Yeah, they're all
locations to
external.
Daly City.
That is
But
correct.
if you're going to establish both medical and recreational outlets, then clearly you'd want to restrict the delivery to those local businesses so that they're
We get to-
prosperous and
Yeah.
the city prospers from that.
But we haven't answered those questions yet. Yeah. Okay, let's move.
Nick.
We get to-
So has that been answered or what? Oh, we'll come back to
So
that.
there was a majority that said that you favor both with regulating hours.
That's on
the
the,
delivery.
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 but, okay, so now we're on the inside delivery or outside?
Now
Is
we're
that something that we need to decide on now?
restricting
External or,
external
yeah.
deliveries to Daly City. Yay or nay?
I would say, well, we have to propose, I'm a little confused. I say no from outside sources. Folks are going to be astute, and they're going to look for the best deal possible. And what's going to happen is, if I was running a business in Berkeley, and I'm going to say, well, somebody in Daly City wants delivery, and and it's harder to regulate, that's what you said earlier. If somebody in Daly City, well, Daly City wants a piece of it, then they got to make a delivery in, say, San Bruno. San Bruno wants a piece of it, and make a delivery in Pacifica. Every city's going to probably want a piece of it, and it's going to make it tough for the
Well,
Berkeley.
and they're just not gonna pay it.
They're not going to pay or they're not going to do it, so.
I didn't do anything.
So I would say no to outside delivery.
So for
In-
clarification, is it no to medical and recreation? I'm just opening up. Is that what's being proposed?
Well, I mentioned before, I'm willing to go with both if we
Okay.
can restrict the hours. So I would accept recreational and medical. Now we're talking about delivery from inside the city or from outside the city.
Well, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here, because you can't deliver from inside the city unless you have an inside the city
Dispensary.
dispensary.
Well, we're
And we
getting there.
haven't talked about that
We're
yet.
getting there.
So, we can talk about the
So it does
cart when we get to
require
the
you to
horse.
make an assumption that if you're agreeing to allow medical and retail deliveries,
Delivery,
that there would be some dispensary from which those deliveries would be made.
Well, we're going ahead with that
What is
right
the-
now. That's the next decision, isn't it? From what I can see.
What is the industry, what are the cities doing when we have that option? Are they foreclosing outside deliveries because of,
Most of the cities that we've seen do not restrict deliveries based on the jurisdiction. Part of the reason why they don't restrict that is the difficulty in enforcing it. Vehicles can come into the city, they're not identifiable.
Yeah.
And so you could have a restriction on the books, but you would have great difficulty in enforcing it.
We can't even control the taxi cab.
That's a tax.
And they've got signs all over them. You know, the marijuana delivery thing is not gonna have, I've got, $10,000 in my pocket with a big marijuana leaf on the side. It's just not gonna be that way.
so I'm in favor of allowing both outside and obviously inside.
So we're at least positive on delivery of some aspect of it.
Yeah, we came
Yeah,
to that
so-
conclusion already earlier on around delivery on both. It was just whether or not we're at the next portion of it, if we were open to external or internal. So that's where we're at. And so Vice Mayor has said he's open to both internal and external. Councilmember Sylvester has mentioned only internal, so that's where we're at. So how do
I
you
think the next
feel about
category
it?
is dispensaries.
But how do you feel about us going internal or external?
I'm saying I'm not interested in regulating anybody outside of the city.
So you're
I think it just costs
both.
too much to be able to do that. So no, I'm not interested in becoming an enforcement.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
question, Jeff, if cities don't restrict external deliveries, from your experience to date, how does that, if at all, impact revenue? Because those external deliveries are being made by distributors who aren't necessarily paying your business license, your fees, or anything else. So
You get nothing.
how does that impact local revenue when you allow external deliveries?
Too early to tell is the best answer I can give you to date.
And you're not gonna know even if,
Yeah, we're 6 months into this regulatory scheme, and we just don't have good data yet on what the impacts of the various licensing structures will be. You could require those who deliver from outside the city into the city to have a delivery permit for a modest fee.
yeah, small business
And
license.
then at least you would
$100.
have some record of who's coming into your city. And you could ask them to observe hours of delivery
Okay.
through that mechanism.
I think
like that.
Makes sense.
that's a way to handle.
So
That
I'm
direction.
going by the body language.
So, yeah.
that-
So
that there
externally
seems
is
to be a
good.
majority
Yeah.
for both external and internal delivery.
With a mechanism.
With a mechanism to limit the hours.
Yes.
Okay.
And
A
have fee.
permit
And
that
a permit.
allows them to
Yeah.
operate with some fee associated with it.
Okay, moving on to
Okay.
dispensary.
So, same questions. Once again, we had, I think, pretty strong community support. A number of those community members were actually interested in opening local businesses that attended our meetings. There was support for both medical and recreational during those meetings. The typical types of properties that would be used for these types of businesses would be retail, storefronts. Less so in a mall environment where there's a controlling lease agreement and commercial entity. We haven't seen those very frequently in the state at this point. So,
Yes.
deliberation.
Well, I mean, if we're allowing delivery, then I think we're all yes for a dispensary.
Yes.
Okay, moving right along.
Okay.
The next
I'm not a
category.
yes,
Okay,
Oh, you're not,
but I'm outnumbered.
okay. So there's a majority of us.
Yeah.
Four
I mean,
out of five.
Somewhere,
You
right?
can't,
How are they
I
gonna
mean,
deliver it if they don't have a place to put it?
Well, I'm assuming they're gonna be coming in from the outside.
Well, no, I mean, the in-house
but wouldn't you
guys.
want to support a local business?
local
Local guys.
Wouldn't you want to
Yes.
support a
Well,
local business?
there's a whole lot of requirements that I'd want to see on a dispensary before I would consider it, and I don't want them all in my neighborhood. And that's one of
We'll
them.
be getting to that.
and we're gonna get to
Few
that.
minutes.
That's why I'm holding back on my
So we have a
positiveness.
majority, and we're
Okay.
moving forward.
Next category is testing labs.
No.
I think it should be a yes. I think that if we don't, the way I read the law, each one of the growers is required to go to a testing lab in order to get their product tested and then delivered back. In San Francisco, I'm aware that a few people that have gotten their testing licenses were part of either a DBE, disadvantaged business, or minority-owned businesses, and there's a local requirement as well. I don't want to I don't want to close off any of these opportunities to any local people. So I would like to keep that, the idea of a testing lab open. And because I'm also aware of the fact that there aren't any noxious or harmful chemicals that come from a testing lab.
yeah.
It's just testing the green leafy matter and getting it in and out of a room. So I don't think that there's a public safety hazard. I don't think that, in fact, most of those labs are close to the public. In fact, there's no real,
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a warehouse, and you go inside and you drop off product and pick up product. So I don't think that, I don't have a problem with a testing lab. And again, I don't want to foreclose another business opportunity to our local people.
Yeah, I would support a testing lab. It looks to me like employment opportunity.
I'm concerned about a testing lab because part of this proposition also deals with that folks have the right to grow 6 plants in their home. And what's to prevent them if law enforcement should see this in plain view? And if they have more than 6 plants and they say, oh, well, we're just a testing lab. And it could be right next door to your
Not
residence.
a testing lab.
They could say that.
No, a
We don't know
testing
what
lab
folks would say.
is an official business. They've got chemists in there and, equipment.
So Councilmember
Ex-hippie out there
Sylvester is
token
still
up.
talking, and so let him finish, and then you can
Thank-
have your comment.
That would be my concern, not unless you can go into further detail as to a testing lab. I'm hearing it could be a warehouse, it could be nondescript, and if we
No signage.
have some sort of guarantee that it would look nondescript and not be in a residence, then I'd be inclined to change my mind on a testing lab.
Can you provide us with information around, like, the testing labs that are, that you've
yes,
seen and are around kind of our area?
I'd be happy to. So these are very similar to a medical testing
Okay.
lab
Yeah.
facility. They have machinery, glassware, sampling devices.
White jackets.
White clothes, gloves, eye protection,
Yeah.
ventilation systems. You can use your zoning requirements to restrict where they can be located so that they cannot be located in residential zones.
I vote yes.
Okay.
I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone said yes, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to manufacturing. This is a different one because we need land for this, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It depends on the scale of manufacturing. There are many examples of what I'd call home-based manufacturers who don't extract the oils and THC and the essence from the plants themselves. They buy it from another manufacturer, and instead they use those to make edible products, okay? And that can be done in a few hundred square feet,
Like a bakery.
like a bakery or a candy manufacturer, that type of an environment. You may, and many cities do, restrict that type of activity to a light industrial or manufacturing zone. It may or may not be appropriate in a residential zone with a business license requirement. That's a locally based decision.
Okay.
I'm okay with manufacturing.
Yeah, I can see some nice little boutique manufacturing
Okay, so
things
you're
here.
okay with
with some-
manufacturing?
I'm good.
Brownies.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Oh, I make a mean brownie.
I'll go for manufacturing, but we specify no residential manufacturing whatsoever. Residential. No,
Except for self-use
well,
with
I
the
don't get
6
it.
plants.
But
Hey, you
that's
can make your own
personal.
brownies.
That's not
Oh, yeah, but,
manufacturing.
okay,
Not for sale.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, not for sale.
Okay, so I think it's a yes for manufacturing. So indoor cultivation.
Before we go on to that, can we get a clarification on what the state overlay, what the state law is? Is it 6 plants?
For personal cultivation,
Right.
it's limited to 6 plants.
That have to not be visible, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
They can't be visible from the public right of way.
And you must have adequate mechanisms in place to keep children away from those plants as well.
That's correct.
So if we were to,
So like a
what you're
greenhouse.
asking on the indoor cultivation issue would be something in addition to the 6 plants?
Yes,
Because they're
what the
six
next,
Commercial.
what the
It would be
next
commercial.
two categories are commercial cultivation.
Commercial.
In other words, an individual or a business would cultivate these plants, harvest them, and then sell them to a distributor who would then put them into the supply chain, either for medicinal or adult use.
Would that be on a much smaller local type scale than if it's indoor cultivation, right?
You could restrict the size of cultivation facilities based on square footage. You can restrict based on zoning requirements, and the like.
I'm okay with indoor cultivation.
I just don't think we have any property big enough to make it,
Let the process
make it be
shake that
feasible.
out. Yeah.
Exactly.
The application process.
What's the possibility of someone walking down a city block and says, hey, can you grow 6 plants for me? And cultivate them, I'll pay you for it, and I'll be back in 7 or 8 months and pick them up.
I think we're doing that now, right? I mean,
Of course, you
Not-
just
not,
gave 1,000 people watching this a really good idea
Well,
on how
I
to
mean-
make some extra cash.
So
You
that-
know, folks will figure out a way to beat the
Of
system.
course they do.
And
The,
you're smiling, so there's really no, I just don't want to
Nothing
push
you can do
people
about
into doing something which they're not doing now. And there are
I'm not going to
entrepreneurs.
say that could never happen,
Right.
but the state licensing and regulation system prohibits a licensed cultivator from
Of-
direct retail sales.
Or entice, or can we add an ordinance to not entice folks to cultivate?
Then
I mean, how do you enforce
if we
something
say
like
that,
that?
then we-
That's like,
We would not, it'd be, you're right, Madam Christensen, it'd be difficult to enforce, but if it's on the books and you get caught, then, I mean,
So I
we're okay
think,
with it.
as an alternative, what I would recommend is that as we develop the regulations in your ordinance, we limit product cultivated in the city of Daly City
the
to
location,
sale to a distributor or wholesaler.
right.
Okay, it can't go directly to an individual retail.
You can't sit
For
out in
purchase.
front of your
That's-
house
that's-
selling it
again,
out
what
of,
you just-
out of a
what you
lawn
just-
chair like a
what you just
lemonade
set
stand.
out is the state law.
Correct.
That is the state law.
Yeah.
And that's what
You,
would,
you have to hold
Yeah.
a retail license, either for medicinal or adult use, in
and
order
so
to sell to
whatever
an
we're
individual.
doing here today, it comports with the state law. We're not, in an area where there's an overlap, you're asking us whether or not we'll be either more or less, we can't be less expansive than the state law. We can only be more expansive. Okay, yeah, as far as, indoor cultivation, I think that's something that, along with the 6, I think the 6 plant rule
Personal.
is okay, but I think that, again, if it's suitable, that we should be able to keep our discretion to determine whether or not an indoor cultivation is something that we'd be okay with. Again, I mean, if, in case you're wondering what I'm thinking, colleagues, I'd like to keep as much discretion as possible in this body, rather than forego our discretion and lose out on an opportunity, or an opportunity for one of our residents. So in an abundance of caution, what I'd like to do is I'd like to, as we go through this process, retain as much discretion as possible. And in areas where we're not clear, have us be the ones to decide what happens, rather than not to make blind prohibitions at this point. Because again, it looks like it's a moving target. It looks like things are developing fairly quickly. And I would like to be of the mind to have the most, rather than the least amount of freedom as it relates to a decision in this regard. So that's why I'm not outright looking for prohibitions on everything.
Okay, thank you. So with the indoor cultivation, can I just get, yes, how about you, Judith?
Yeah,
Was it
I don't have a
indoor or
problem.
outdoor? Oh,
That's
Indoor.
indoor?
We were at indoor.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, Councilmember
I don't think it's
Sylvester?
very likely that it would
Yeah.
happen here.
Again, but keep in mind, we have
Maybe
power.
somebody's got some sun someplace.
is this indoor over 6
This
plants?
indoor.
I'm sorry, I couldn't,
Is this indoor over 6 plants?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
it's,
this is
it's a
commercial, it's
business,
not personal.
not your individual.
We can't restrict the
No.
individual cultivation. That's
Gotcha.
permitted under state law.
Oh, I just wanted to confirm, we're talking about indoor in excess of 6 plants, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about commercial and businesses, so it's a yes. And now outdoor cultivation, I think that's the one where we, but,
Again, you know, and to be consistent, I mean, I don't know where land will develop. I don't know what kind of an outdoor cultivation we would okay, whether it's a greenhouse on somebody's property or whether it's, you know, something that's unobtrusive. Again, to sit here and blindly prohibit it, I'm not going to do that. I would like to be able to retain, again, the discretion to be able to say, all right, what is your idea? What do you want to do? And then be able to say no at that point, and rather than saying no at this juncture. So I would like to keep open the idea of outdoor cultivation, just as just to keep that discretion.
well, I think the question I have is in regards to the analysis and all the other jurisdictions that are around us or within California. I mean, what has been kind of the outdoor cultivation landscape?
So there's a wide variety of responses to outdoor cultivation. I think most of those are aligned with the urban versus rural characters of the communities. And so most urban or suburban communities have chosen to ban outdoor cultivation, including personal cultivation. A few have allowed outdoor in greenhouses, personal cultivation in enclosed greenhouses. Where you see commercial outdoor cultivation permitted is where they have agricultural land use, where there's significant separation from adjacent residential properties. Because there are odor issues, particularly when it is during harvest time.
What was,
Go ahead.
what was the community's response to outdoor?
In general, unless they were aligned with the industry, there were concerns about outdoor cultivation. Didn't feel that there was land use and enough separation from residential areas in the community for it to be appropriate here.
Yeah, I'm definitely against outdoor cultivation because of those reasons you just stated, is too close to houses and stuff. But also, when you're in a really tight area, it's really hard to police the borders of your, you know. If you've got an acre of land on each side that's nothing, it's easy to see who's coming in and who's going out. But I'm just thinking of our police department running around in the middle of the night because someone's running around pulling somebody's plants out of the ground, you know. the week during harvest week, and they can tell when harvest week is because they can smell it.
Well, yeah, well, I think for me is more around kind of how it's, you can't really isolate the smell, and I know that community members have that concern. You've talked about facilities where it's testing labs, or mentioned earlier, it doesn't, you can't even tell it's there. So I think that's the piece of it that, people do have the freedom of choice to choose, but then now if it's, now in other people's, they can smell it. And when you just mentioned around the growing phase and when it's time to, extract it or pick them. So that's how I feel. I'm a no on it.
I have to concur, no for outdoor. I can just see the headlines in the news now where helicopters from San Mateo County Sheriffs are flying over San Bruno Mountain because they came across a big field that has outdoor cultivation, and it's the older issues. Inside the building, fine, but outside, no.
But no also.
All right, let's move on.
All right, now the last but not least is distribution.
So just a quick explanation of what distribution is. So under the state's regulatory model, once a crop is harvested, it must be sold to a distributor who then takes a testing sample, takes that to the lab, and makes sure that it's free from contaminants, heavy metals, any other kinds of pesticide things. And then they transport it to either a manufacturer or dispensary/retailer.
Do they require, so would a distributor require a warehouse?
Generally, they have to have a place to store product and park vehicles, and so I think it's very similar to a trucking or distribution warehouse type of environment.
Not the kind of thing where it would be like dispatched. Like, I mean, we're not talking about like high traffic, in and out, trucks rolling in and out dispatching. I mean, when I'm thinking about busy businesses like Sears, the loading dock, trucks running in and out, that kind of stuff.
It's a little bit difficult to answer that question because we don't know how many growing facilities will be located in this region and would be served by a distribution facility in Daly City.
Now, if a person were to get a distribution license in Daly City, they would not be limited to procuring their product in Daly City. They could procure their product anywhere in the world and distribute it from here, correct?
Correct. Right. It's very, very similar to a liquor distributor.
And the number of those, there are good ones and there are bad ones. There are ones that are popular, just like any liquor distributor, some that cater to high end, some that cater to low end. So if you were to begin an industry like this, you would have to have kind of a wide array of distributors that would cater to those different levels of markets, correct?
Yes, I think you'll have small scale distribution or distributors, and you're going to have the very large scale.
You're going to have your out-of-state big guys and your local guys, right?
Frankly, I know some who have experience in the wine distribution business.
Right.
Exactly.
Who set up separate companies for cannabis.
Which is exactly what's happening with the labs. I know a lot of people that have medical licenses that have basically switched over from blood samples to cannabis samples. So I'm in favor of it being allowing distribution here in Daly City.
Okay. You're in favor?
Yeah.
Anyone else in favor for distribution?
Yes, I'm in favor. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
What was the community's response to distribution?
Didn't have a lot of concerns come back from the community meetings, as I recall. I don't know whether the city manager remembers any concerns being voiced either.
Okay, I'm in favor.
So I think we're all good with distribution. I think one factor, well, we're moving on to this. Go ahead. I was
You wanna
going
go
to
back?
talk about, no, I was going to talk about how having a preference if, supporting local business or residents, I think is something important.
So I heard that a number of times as we discussed the various licensing categories was a concern that local residents, local businesses have an opportunity to establish themselves in these industries. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the ways that can be incorporated in an application or a merit-based selection process. So I think what we heard was a majority in support of delivery from both businesses located within the city and from outside the city, provided that there's a requirement for a permit to deliver within the city of Daly City, and that there is a restriction on the times that deliveries can be made in the city. Okay? There was also a majority in support of dispensaries for both adult and medical cannabis products. There was also support for testing labs. Those don't have a differentiation between medical and adult use. They test all products. There was also support for manufacturing, provided that it is not allowed in residentially zoned areas of the city. There was support for indoor cultivation of both adult and medicinal cannabis. And there was not support for outdoor cultivation. And there was unanimous support for distribution. Okay, all right. I think we've got those, all right?
Now, get to the details.
Now to the details. And this looks complicated, but I think as we get into it, we're going to find some common themes that's going to make it a little bit easier, hopefully. So the first question is, do we want to limit the number of businesses? And that could be yes for one category and no for another. Or yes for all, or no for all. So an example, I think Councilmember Christensen mentioned a concern about over-concentration in one area of the city versus another. And so it is possible to limit the number of businesses. Let's use dispensaries as an example.
Good idea.
You could also say that, for example, you're going to see my lack of knowledge about the names of the areas in the city, but you could say you would allow one dispensary in the Bay Shore area. You could allow another in the area west of the freeway, and a third in the original area of the city. Did I get that right? Or close enough?
And further south in Saramonte.
Or those kinds of examples. So you could use a combination of a numerical limit and a geographic requirement. And so you could say you could have one in each one of those areas, but not more than one. And so you'd have a limit of 3 or 4 in total. But if they weren't able to locate in each geographic area, you'd have less than that total number.
At the onset, I was thinking the number 5, but one for sure in the area near the water. Is it the horse stables? Does red mean you can place there or you cannot? Oh, cannot.
The red is the one you can.
It's a commercial zone.
Means
You
it's-
can.
Because it's in the coastal area.
Oh, you have to get coastal permission?
The Coastal Commission.
Okay.
So the coastal commission would get involved.
Oh, they're crazy people.
Not high.
Okay.
That would ever be.
All right.
I would like to kick this off by saying I definitely like to limit the number of dispensaries.
I too would like to limit the number of dispensaries.
Okay.
Because I think those are the ones that are the most intrusive.
How many?
Well,
Let's talk about neighborhoods. I mean, just like you said, I think that the south is Ceremony, the northwest is Westlake,
And Cow Palace, Bay
Crocker,
Shore?
Bay Shore.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
start with where you don't want.
Top of the hill?
Vice Mayor,
So I have a thought, which is, well, first, I guess a question. Do we have to, are we talking about placing something on the ballot where the voters will decide if there's a specific number? Or can we just police ourselves without having a specific number? I think that's the more appropriate way to go, because I think it's going to change in time. It's going to change in circumstances. And I think it's better that we decide by policing ourselves when the issues come up, whether or not we're going to grant someone to have a dispensary here or there. I don't know if we need to restrict ourselves now, because we can always make that decision later, given the circumstances of how things develop. So my idea is, let's not set a limit now, because that doesn't mean we're not going to police ourselves. I'm sure we all are, because we're all concerned about this issue. I'm just thinking about the best way. We don't close doors on certain neighborhoods, but at the same time recognizing we have the ability to do so.
the only thing that goes to the voters is the tax.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
The rest of this is our
Does.
purview.
And that's what I think we should be doing, and not set a limit, I guess.
Well, we disagree.
Well, let me.
Well, the only benefit, not the only benefit, but one of the benefits of at least having some idea of the number that you would want is for the permitting process. Because otherwise, if you just throw it open, you could have a whole lot of people that want a permit. And if you don't want 100 permits in the city, by having some upward limit, then that limits, you're not saying necessarily it's a separate issue where they would be located, but determining if there is going to be a limit on the number will reduce the permit process, because then you'll tell everyone, the city of Daly City has approved an ordinance to allow for these dispensaries, and they will consider up to a maximum of X.
And this has been the situation that
Yeah.
has occurred in other
Most
jurisdictions.
cities are doing it that way, where they say, you could say 10, but not grant 10 initially, if that's, and that would sort of speak to what you're saying, Ray, that you allow yourself the discretion to decide whether you'll allow all 10 up front, or maybe only allow 5 of 10 up
Right.
front.
Not to
And
exceed.
you always
Yeah.
have the authority. It's much easier to expand the
Yes.
number of permits that you
Reduce.
Reduce.
provide than it is to reduce or take them away.
That's why I'd like to suggest 3.
That's a good number.
You can always expand, but once someone has invested in a business and you try to take their business away from them, that just screams lawsuit to me,
And when someone's deciding whether or not they want to come in to do the kind of business like this into a jurisdiction like this, they want to know, what is the city thinking in the way of, they want to get an idea, a picture of, here's what the city is today. What are they thinking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Do they see themselves growing or larger in that regard. So I think that we should start with a number and then start trying to determine geographically where. And I'll give you a little example about Pacifica, and only because I knew some people that were part of that process. And they granted a number of them in Pacifica, but the big joke there is that there's no way that anybody's ever going to open one in Lindemar. I mean, everybody in Lindemar basically said that. But in order to get it passed, they had to put out there that they would put it in not just in one part of the city. They said, we are going to allow 3 to 5 of these things, and it's going to be in different parts. So it allowed for specific applicants to say, all right, I'm coming into Pacifica, but I'm not going to apply for one in Lindemar. I'm going to apply for one this side of Highway 1 or whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that I think we need to give an indication of how many, with a city of 100,000 people, and give some perspective. How many did Pacifica allow in their city? Do you know?
I do not know.
I think they're, Rose, do you know? Was it 5? Because it was 5. Yeah, and again, in the insight I got was, that's great, it's 5 on paper, but there's no way you'll ever do one in Lindemar. I mean, if you know anything about Pacifica, it's not a lot of commercial area in that area, and it's totally a neighborhood. But the city went forward anyway, determining that they were going to open in these other areas. So I think we should start with a number.
Well-
Judith has thrown a 3 out there.
Well, I know there's numbers that are being, or a numerical amount right now, but it's also, like, as mentioned, well, what are the possibilities? I mean, if we look at the map and we say we want it in one area, but there's actually no area for retail, then, I mean, we might as well not say that area. So I think we just have to look.
Map.
Or, yeah, we may have to change the buffer zones to accommodate the geographical separation that we're looking for. I mean, if we're all agreed that, at least that at the outset, that there has to be some layer of a geographical separation, that is, an ability to determine that there's no concentration.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's one of the things that we have to weigh that against.
Earlier, that it should be dispersed.
Yeah, we're going to have to weigh that against that map that has a bunch of green all over
Said
it.
it, so that's why I think it's important for us to look at the map.
So I think that what's helpful would be neighborhoods. I mean, we all know our city, we all know our neighborhoods, and we should start thinking about, all right, if it's 3, where? What neighborhoods are we thinking about? And again, I only started the process just by saying the ones I can, Serramonte, Westlake, Crocker, Bayshore. I mean, we're going to have to say where we want these, if we want them anywhere. If we're clearly saying that, we may as well come out and say where we want to put them.
If I can make a recommendation.
Sure.
I had put out a number 5 earlier,
I like 5 too.
and I'm concerned about concentration. And I'm just wondering if we can also add in that no 2 locations shall be within 1 mile of each other. Is that too
You're making
big?
it even more tough. With all those green marks over there and that one, there's going to be nowhere.
Well, I'm thinking
If you're gonna say it's 1 per,
mile radius.
neighborhood, then it's gonna be.
They're going to be close. We got a small town.
If we put one, top of my head, if we put one in Westlake, you can put one in Serramonte because it's more than a mile apart.
Yeah.
And you can put one in the Bay Shore, it's more than a mile apart from either the.
And then one in the far east side in my neighborhood, one in Crocker.
One top of the hill, I don't know, still a mile.
See, but Mission Street looks like you're really constricted with Mission Street. You're either going to have to carve out a niche
And
because it's totally green as far as I can see.
in the area further down at the corner, that's not
Well, if we
Serramonte.
knew what those streets were.
What is that? That's a plaza, right? What is that?
There's one, it looks like on Juniper Serra, right about a little south of Duggins. Doesn't that, the little tiny smoochy red up there, isn't that?
yeah.
You can see Marchbank as a triangle, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
That
sure
must be
what that was.
Pacific
That's gotta
Plaza
be on
area.
Juniper
Yeah,
Serra.
it
Or
could
it might be on
potentially
the,
be the development
Plaza.
site.
Yeah.
Or it could be, you know, where the building NEM's acquired.
What's the triangular
Put it next to the
area
Jaguar
further down?
dealership.
Here,
All the way down.
this is
Yeah.
a storage facility.
Ah.
This is public storage.
Oh, that's
Uh-huh.
a good place for it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have
Huh?
Ceremony Shopping Center and Westlake Shopping Center, and I think it was mentioned before that it's probably unlikely that the landlords there would entertain a lease for such a business. So the other thing we have to think about here is a landlord's willingness to lease the space or whether the space is even available. So even if it's red, it doesn't mean it's available for
what's that one that your arrow just went
Here?
by? Yeah, what's that?
This is Skyline Plaza, so
Oh, yeah.
without the bank and church buffer zone, this
That's
could be a
doable.
potential location. If we layer on the banks and the churches, it was eliminated.
Where's St. Francis Square?
St. Francis Square is, let's see, I'm sorry. I think it's right here, so a portion of it. And one
Again,
thing
that
we may
does-
want to think about is it parcel to parcel, door to door? You have situations like in a shopping center where the buildings are interior to the site, but the parcel, you know, is much bigger. So are we looking at distance
Yeah.
from the parcel or distance from the door to the business? So that's another consideration.
Let's go with a number.
Why don't you put the other map up so they can see that?
So
No.
this is with the added
the
bank and
added
church
buffer zones?
buffers. So even the light yellow is showing elimination of properties. And again, I know there, Councilmember Sylvester had suggested 1,000-foot buffer. Obviously, that would shrink up the available
Yeah,
spaces as well.
Yeah, Glenn, I know what you were doing. I know where you're going with that thought and the increasing the things, but I think we're gonna have to weigh how much constricted it becomes with the reality of
Yes.
how do we achieve geographic equality?
Gotcha.
And I think if we determine the geographic equality is our number one criteria, then we're gonna have to draw on that map to accommodate where we want to put them, and we're gonna have to be specific. And that's the way I see it.
What are those little red things down south of the Serramonte Shopping Center and to the east of the freeway?
Oh, I'm sorry.
South of Serramonte, east of the freeway, down a little bit,
That's
down a
Gellert
little bit.
Marketplace.
And those little tiny ones,
Oh,
right
these
there.
are two gas stations that
Uh-huh.
That
are
is,
at the front of Crown Colony.
Is it, that's,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
is that the 7-Eleven on the way
And-
up to get up?
And this is
The
Kaiser,
Kaiser.
which
Yeah.
maybe
It's
medicinal.
not really commercial, it's
I
a
know.
medical facility. They don't even let you
They'll do
smoke
testing.
cigarettes
So
there.
again, you know, we just looked
Yeah.
at commercial zoning. We didn't add any filters to that. So like, for example, this commercial piece here, that's another storage facility. So some
Right,
of
that's
these
when you just come over the top of the
aren't-
mountain there.
I mean, we could refine this map further. Now that we know that there's some interest in allowing for these businesses, we can certainly look at adding different
we need to.
considerations to the commercial zones.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about is some of these areas are planned developments, so they don't have the open zoning like commercial does. So that if we were to amend our ordinances to allow it in commercial zones, then we would technically have to go in and open up the planned development zones as well. So that's just another consideration.
Well, if we went in the direction of having 5 and then moving forward, identifying, you know, what you mentioned around like sites, and then maybe that's how we can kind of figure out zoning for moving forward.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we
and
would
then
look
there's-
at.
yeah.
But what I would point out is,
I don't think there are 5 sites on
I
there.
don't think there's one available
I don't even
unless
think there are
they.
3
that's-
on there.
And that's why we were, what I alluded to earlier with Glenn, and that was, if we were to give you a charge, and that would be to go, all right, find us 5 places that are equidistant or that are geographically spread out and gave you the freedom to be able to actually, I mean, if it's a 600 thing and you need 100 here or 200 there or something where it's like, all right, you're not like throwing it all out and you're going, I'm trying to accommodate this geographic equality thing. Do you think that's something that if we were to throw that in your lap that you could do?
Well, it's a challenge, certainly. We can look at that. I'm not aware of how we move outside of the state mandated buffers, so we could explore that
No,
as well.
that's why.
And in some cases, we may have to reduce that. The question, I think, for neighborhood equity would be, just so that we could get one in Serramonte, we allow it 200 feet from the school, but we don't have that same, lax regulation in another neighborhood.
That's what
So
I'm talking
something
about.
you would
To
have think
achieve
about.
the equality part, that's what I would be willing to.
Well, when you look at that map, you've got shopping centers, storage facilities, you've got the Cow Palace, you've got the riding stables, you've got Kaiser. I mean, I don't think you could find 3 places there where the people who own the property would allow it. I don't see anything up there, do you?
No.
What's up on, is that Hillside? There's a little one right there.
What is
What's
it?
that? That's Hillside, right?
Yeah, this is Hillside.
Mormon Church.
Hillside.
And this
Oh, yeah.
is Mission.
That's the Mormon
so that's
Church?
Probably.
Is that Brunswick?
No, that
Is that,
maybe
is that
Mission Plaza.
Hillside in Brunswick?
Hmm.
I don't know.
Or is that the lot on the corner of
No,
Hillside 88?
No, our triangle? No, that's the one across.
Yeah,
That's
Mission
right there.
Plaza is probably around here. This might be that auto body shop.
Oh, yeah, the
that's
auto body
yeah.
on Hillside.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Yeah.
is it. It's
That's
shaped that
right.
way.
Oh, it's surely got to be covered by the school. There's a Catholic school right there.
Oh, that's further down, I think. That's the auto body shop that's on
No,
Hillside
yeah,
further
this
down.
is where the former City Toyota repair shop,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think is.
Yeah, the repair shop, further down on Hillside,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
That's what
the
I'm
Mormon
guessing it
place
is,
is
because
up
I know that commercial goes out to
And
Hillside.
And there
The
is
church
something
Latter-day
across the
Saints is
street
right
from
there
that
as
that's
well.
also
Right across the
commercial.
street from
Also,
it.
some,
Right, so-
glass.
That
or
triangular spot
something
Yeah.
like that.
across the street from that big.
So
Yeah.
one thing the council may want to consider is, or a question you may want to address is, do you want to incorporate the bank and church buffer zones? This is the map that shows those included. That's the map that shows them, is without them.
If I can make a suggestion, Glenn, it looks like we're running into some compaction problems here, and that I would request that we take a look at it without those additional buffer zones.
I guess I don't understand why the bank and why the church. Other than maybe church people don't like people smoking dope? I mean, maybe that's it? I don't know. Glenn, it was your suggestion.
Right.
Convince me of something important here.
Well, first of all, I feel that we should not be looking at this as a revenue opportunity, but basically what the people have voted for and want. The revenue comes as additional add-on. Given how much we have gone through this, and to Mr. Gangona's request, I'd be willing to take out the churches and the, I think it was. The banks. I thought, first of all, churches, people go to church and they don't want to come out of church and go a few feet and see people smoking pot. Or the banks, during the week, well, I'll just go to the bank, get some more money so I can go down to the store and go buy. I just wanted to prevent some of that. So I'm willing to take out the banks and the churches.
We could
And-
say closed on Sunday.
And also, Mr. Gangona, you bring up a good point,
Saturday for some
because
faiths.
I've always had a feeling that for businesses to come to Daly City, we want them to thrive and do our city well. So I'm willing to take out the 1,000-foot buffer as well.
Great, great, good idea. Thanks, Glenn. I think that'll be helpful for staff's perspective.
I just had to ask a question, though, when we did this.
So can we reach a
So,
consensus
yeah,
on that?
let's
Madam
get a
Mayor, on
number.
Is it 5?
5 was on the table. how do people feel about 5? I know it was your suggestion, so you're
I'm
good.
no on 5.
No on 5. Vice Mayor?
Well, before the vice mayor responds, I like the idea that as situation changes in our city, we as a council can increase that at any time later on to accommodate. If we leave it as nothing, and we can, as Ms. Martell says, we'll have so many folks applying for permits, and in the absence of a particular number, somebody's going to say, well, what happened? I want to be part of that, and why can't I be a part of that? And I'm not looking forward to any litigation.
Compromise.
Yes. And I also
I
think.
want 3, you
Okay,
guys
you
want
want
5.
3, there's 5, but I think also, as mentioned, even if we put 5,
We can.
but there's no location, then it's gonna be lower than that. I mean,
You can always increase, like you
Let's
said.
aim for 4. How about that? Aim.
Vice Mayor, you're next.
I'm good with 5.
So you're not gonna give. Well,
I'm also good with 4. That
I'm
doesn't
with
mean,
3.
you know, so
I want to see 3
I didn't want
and
any
we
limit,
expand.
remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
might end up with 3.
yeah,
so let's go.
because given the, yeah,
Gives us
exactly.
Well, you can always change it.
You
Okay.
can, but I mean, given, if we were just looking at the
Hey,
landscape
you
right
guys
now.
run the show. I still express my opinion.
right.
That's okay.
5.
All right,
Sounds
so,
good to me.
Heard a
okay, so
majority
Mike is
for
good with 5 and 5.
Good. What's
Okay,
next?
then, I also heard a desire for staff to develop some map alternatives
Yes.
showing geographic areas.
Yes.
Where this
And in
might be
those places
possible.
where they deviated, from the buffer, they just tell us why and we'll justify it.
Can we have
And I heard staff also identify an
Sure, we
alternative
definitely
where
can.
rather than using
5
the
minutes
property
after this.
boundary for the buffer zone requirement, to adjust that to the building
Yeah.
location for the
Mm-hmm.
buffer.
Okay,
That will have the effect of shrinking the
Good.
buffer
Giving them
areas.
as much freedom as possible in that regard.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then with staff looking at a more finite kind of area, geographic area. So at this moment, I think we're going to take a 5-minute break for yourself, the staff, and everyone. So,
involved.
all right, thank you very much. We'll be back in 5. Appreciate it.